After days of speculation, the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan today announcing a new Eskom board. Of course, this is the board that they'll be looking to bring on board new solutions to tackle the country's energy crisis. Businessman Mpho MaKwana will now be the one to chair that board. Energy expert Chris Yelland joins me tonight. Chris, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. So, firstly, it's long been spoken about that there could well be changes coming up at Eskom. Just this past weekend, I think it was the Sunday Times that said, it had confirmation from its sources that a new board would be announced in due course. When you look at the individuals that have been appointed to this board, how different are they from those that were at the helm before?
Well, look, the current board, I think I'm very heartened by the quality of the persons appointed to the board. I think there's a good mix of skills, including technical, engineering, accounting, change management, and others. This is very different from some of the previous boards. I mean, one only has to look at a board appointed by then Minister Lynn Brown, which was nothing more than a group of Gupta stooges. This is very different, and I'm heartened by it. I'm very pleased, in fact, that we have not seen the appointment of these noisy, disruptive, former Eskom executives, acting CEOs and CEOs, including the so-called tweeting engineer himself. Really heartened by the fact that these kind of people are nowhere to be seen. I'm also heartened by the fact that Dr. Rod Crompton remains on the board, giving it some continuity. I'm heartened by Sekani Mtumbeni, a person who I know and highly respect, coming from the mining sector. I'm heartened by others on the board that I don't know personally, but have reputations in the industry of long expertise. So all in all, I think it's a great board. I don't think we should hold out the expectation that there's going to be a sudden or immediate change. A board is there to provide oversight and not to be hands-on. That is the job of the executive team and the CEO, COO, CFO, etc.
There certainly is a lot of pressure on these individuals as they take up these posts. Chris, I want us to talk about some of the issues that had been brought up by the previous board, because the reality is, if you still have concerns around political interference, Eskom not being able to do its job because of the meddling of politicians, it doesn't matter who you put in those positions, nothing will change. Are you satisfied that some of the issues previously raised by this board that is now out of Eskom have been adequately dealt with?
Well, I think it is an improvement. It's always when a state-owned enterprise is performing poorly, that is when politicians want to get involved more than ever before. And I can understand why, because there's a lot of pressure on politicians themselves then, to find out what is going on in the state-owned enterprise. So to keep politicians out of the engine room, there needs to be a pact between the management and the politicians. And the pact is that, if you meet your shareholder compact, you're left to manage the company. But otherwise, you really are inviting people into the engine room, and ultimately that is not a good thing, because politicians do not understand the details of the business of Eskom. So I think it's really up to Eskom to start performing, and in that way it prevents the kind of political interference that is prevalent.
There are some who believe that one of the quick fixes to this problem would be to get rid of the CEO and the COO. As you mentioned earlier, the board is not responsible for day-to-day operations, and those really then fall at the door of both these individuals, alongside their management teams, of course.
Of course, there's going to be enormous pressure on the CEO, the COO, the CFO, and the whole executive team to perform. I think one has to acknowledge that what we are seeing in terms of the financial, operational, and environmental situation in Eskom is, the result of literally decades of mismanagement and maladministration, corruption, and this didn't start with 2 years ago with the appointment of the current CEO and COO. It goes back many, many decades. So I think we've just got to hold people accountable for what they can do and what they should do. One cannot hold them accountable, for 30, 40 years of mismanagement. It is a lot to deal with in 2 years. And I personally am of the view that by removing the COO and the CEO, as called for by some really disruptive forces in South Africa, doesn't address the real problem. The real problem is not De Ruyter or Oberholzer. The real problem, is deep within Eskom. Even replacing the board, you mustn't think that is going to suddenly, solve the problem. No, the problems still have to be solved and worked on. They are deep.
If that's the case, then Chris, how much weight should be placed on removing the board? Because if I take your earlier comments about how you believe that this board has a greater diversity of skill that they'll bring to Eskom, and yet in the same breath you say actually, it's not like that board could do much with the scale of damage there was to Eskom, nor can the CEO or COO in trying to undo that damage, then what is the point of all of this?
Look, the board is a very important part of the management structure of Eskom. It is the interface between the executive and the shareholder through the chairman of the board. And its job is not to run Eskom. Its job is oversight and governance, to ensure that there is proper oversight and governance being followed. And that is its role. It's an important role. It is very unhelpful when a board becomes so severely depleted, as it was for a long time, that it cannot perform this oversight role properly and the governance role properly. When the tasks of the board that get allocated to board members become so burdensome, you've got to remember that the non-executive directors, which form the big part of the board, these are not full-time people. So if they are depleted and too much falls on them, they cannot perform these functions. And not only there's just not enough numbers of people, but different board members bring different skills and knowledge to the table, whether it's legal, whether it's accounting, whether it's environmental, whether it's management, whether it's technical and engineering, and change management and human resources. All of these form the kind of mix that you need to provide proper oversight. And if you don't have those skills, the board cannot do its function. The function of the board is not to run the company, at an operating level, not at all. But it is still a very important part of the whole structure.
All right, Chris Yelland, we'll leave it there for tonight. Thanks for your time.